At our wedding reception, my husband danced with his mother as she hissed, "You'll always be mine first, not hers." He smirked and nodded. I snatched the mic and declared, "Time to reveal the wedding surprise you two so secretly planned for me." Their smiles dropped, and the whole room gasped at the unforgivable truth. I watched as my new husband James swayed with his mother Eleanor on the dance floor. The reception was in full swing, crystal glasses clinking, string quartet playing softly in the background. I should have been the happiest woman alive. Instead, I felt my stomach twist as Eleanor pulled her son closer, her red lacquered nails digging into his shoulder. "You'll always be mine first, not hers," she whispered, loud enough that I could read her lips from where I stood. James didn't pull away. He didn't laugh it off. He smirked and nodded, a silent agreement that sent ice through my veins. In that moment, everything crystallized. Every doubt, every strange incident, every compromise I'd made, they weren't isolated events. They were a pattern I'd been too in love to recognize. My hands trembled, but my voice wouldn't. I crossed to the DJ booth, whispered something to the wedding coordinator who hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. The music faded. I took the microphone, my white gown suddenly feeling like a costume. "Before we continue celebrating," I said, my voice echoing across the suddenly quiet ballroom, "there's a wedding surprise James and Eleanor have been planning without me that I think everyone should see." The projection screen behind the head table lowered with a soft mechanical hum. Confused murmurs rippled through the crowd. James froze mid-dance, his face draining of color as he recognized the documents appearing on screen. The emails, the financial agreements, the texts between mother and son, planning my future without my knowledge. "The documents you're seeing tell a story that will destroy our wedding day," I said, my voice steadier than I'd expected. "And save my life." I met James Harrington at a charity gala 3 years ago. He was everything I'd dreamed of, attentive, successful, with a smile that made my heart race. When he asked for my number, I didn't hesitate. Our first date turned into a second, then a 10th. By month 3, I was falling hard. The only cloud in our perfect sky was his mother, Eleanor. When James first introduced us at an upscale restaurant downtown, she looked me up and down like she was appraising damaged goods. "James tells me you work in marketing," she said, her smile never reaching her eyes. "How creative. I always hoped he'd find someone in a more substantial profession. Like his ex, Rebecca. She was a surgeon, you know." James squeezed my hand under the table. "Mom, please," he whispered, but there was no real rebuke in his voice. That night set the pattern. Eleanor would undermine, James would offer token resistance, then ultimately defer to his mother. When I brought it up later, he'd kiss my forehead and say, "That's just Mom being Mom, she'll warm up to you." She never did. When James proposed 6 months later, I was ecstatic, until our engagement dinner. Eleanor wore white, a fashion faux pas so obvious it couldn't be accidental. When I showed her my ring, she, accidentally, spilled red wine down the front of my cream dress. "Oh dear," she said, dabbing ineffectually at the spreading stain. "Clumsy me. Perhaps it's a sign you should wear darker colors. They're more forgiving on your figure." James just handed me his napkin and changed the subject. I told myself it was normal mother-in-law drama. That once we were married, boundaries would be established. That James loved me enough to choose me when it mattered. I was wrong on all counts. Ever had that gut feeling someone was working against you behind your back? Subscribe to Reddit Family Sagas for more stories of betrayal and the sweet revenge that follows. Wedding planning became a battlefield with Eleanor as the general and James her loyal lieutenant. What should have been joyful decisions became exercises in frustration. "We've always dreamed of a beach wedding," I told Eleanor when she insisted on her family's church, a Gothic cathedral that felt cold and imposing. "Beaches are so common," she replied. "The Harrington family has been married in St. Augustine's for generations. James understands tradition, don't you, darling?" 2 days later, James came home looking sheepish. "I spoke with the church. They had a cancellation for June 15th. I put down a deposit." "But we already reserved the beachfront," I said, stunned. "We put down a non-refundable deposit." He shrugged. "Mom's right. The church photographs better." The guest list was next. I discovered Eleanor had revised it while I was at work, removing half my college friends and adding distant Harrington relatives I'd never met. The venue has limited capacity, she explained when confronted. I simply prioritized family. James agrees, don't you? He did. He always did. The final straw should have been the honeymoon. We'd planned 2 weeks in Bali, a destination we'd both researched extensively. Then I overheard James on the phone. Yes, Mom, I've changed the reservations. We'll be in Naples instead. Yes, your sister can join us for dinner on Tuesday. No, she doesn't know yet. I'll tell her it was a surprise. When I confronted him, he seemed genuinely confused by my anger. Mom pointed out that Bali is so far if there's an emergency. Naples is beautiful and you'll love Aunt Judith. But even that wasn't enough to make me walk away. Not until I found my wedding dress. I'd selected a sleek, modern gown that made me feel beautiful. Eleanor had pushed for a traditional ball gown, more befitting a Harrington bride. I stood my ground, one of the few victories I'd managed. Or so I thought, until I went for my final fitting 1 week before the wedding. The seamstress unveiled my altered gown, now with lace overlay, puffed sleeves, and a modified neckline that matched Eleanor's wedding photos from 30 years ago. Mrs. Harrington brought in the specifications, the seamstress said, confused by my horror. She said it was a surprise you'd agreed on. James defended his mother. She was only trying to help. The dress looks more elegant now. I swallowed my tears and nodded. 1 more week, I told myself. After the wedding, things would change. The night before our wedding, James went out for drinks with his groomsmen. I was soaking in a bath, trying to calm my nerves, when I heard his laptop ping with an email notification. I shouldn't have looked. But some instinct, self-preservation perhaps, made me wrap myself in a towel and check the screen. An email draft was open, addressed to the Harrington family lawyer. Per our discussion, attached is the post-nuptial agreement transferring oversight of wedding gifts and financial decisions to Eleanor Harrington as family trustee. Please prepare documents for signing during our return from Naples. My hands shaking, I clicked through his other tabs. A text conversation with Eleanor. Eleanor, is the guest room ready for my things? Yes. We'll move them in while she's at her spa appointment next week. She still doesn't suspect. Not a thing. She thinks it's temporary, just until you find a new place. Perfect. A mother belongs with her son. The final document made my knees buckle. Property records for our new home, the one we'd chosen together, that I'd contributed my entire savings toward, with Eleanor listed as co-owner alongside James. My name was nowhere to be found. I locked myself in the bathroom, wedding dress hanging on the door like a ghost, and silently fell apart. Hours passed. By dawn, my tears had dried, replaced by a clarity so sharp it was almost painful. The wedding would happen, but not the marriage they had planned. Morning brought a flurry of activity. Bridesmaids, makeup artists, photographers, all swirling around me as I sat with uncanny calm. Eleanor arrived, uninvited, to the bridal suite, immediately taking control. That lipstick is too bold, she told the makeup artist. Something more subtle for a Harrington bride. The photographer should focus on the church architecture during the ceremony, she instructed. It's more important than close-ups. James called 3 times, not to speak to me, but to check in with his mother. Yes, Mom, I've got the rings. Yes, I remembered your corsage. No, I haven't seen her dress yet. With each interaction, I saw what I'd been blind to before. James' insistence on buying a house 3 blocks from his mother's. For convenience, when we need help with future children. Eleanor's weekly family dinners that had gradually become daily check-ins. The way James consulted his mother on everything from car purchases to vacation plans before even mentioning them to me. The realization hit like a physical blow. I wasn't marrying a partner. I was becoming their property, a vessel for Harrington heirs, a housekeeper for their dynasty, a silent participant in a relationship where I would always come third. My maid of honor, Tasha, noticed something was off. She shooed everyone out of the room on the pretense of needing to fix my veil. What's wrong? She asked when we were alone. And don't say nothing. You look like you're planning a murder, not a marriage. The truth spilled out. Everything I'd discovered, everything I'd endured, everything I'd ignored. To my surprise, Tasha wasn't shocked. We've all been worried, she admitted, squeezing my hands. The way he defers to her, the way she treats you, it's not normal. We didn't know how to tell you without you thinking we were jealous or unsupportive. I need to expose them, I said. Not just walk away, they need to face what they've done. Tasha's eyes widened, then narrowed with determination. What do you need? My cousin Ryan, a tech consultant, slipped away to prepare the projection. The wedding coordinator, after seeing the evidence, reluctantly agreed to help with my special presentation. My college roommate arranged for her car to be waiting at the side entrance. Whatever happens in there, Tasha said as we prepared to leave for the church, we've got your back. The ceremony passed in a blur. I said my vows mechanically, feeling nothing as James slipped the ring on my finger. It was just a prop now, a costume piece in the drama I was about to direct. The reception venue glittered with elegant centerpieces Eleanor had selected. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across white linen tablecloths. The string quartet played Pachelbel as servers circulated with champagne flutes. Ladies and gentlemen, the DJ announced, it's time for the mother-son dance. Eleanor floated onto the dance floor in her silver gown, a shade too bridal, positioned at the head table, a place traditionally reserved for the bride's parents. James took her hand, beaming with genuine joy I hadn't seen during our first dance. They swayed together, Eleanor clutching him possessively. When she whispered in his ear and he nodded with that conspiratorial smile, something in me hardened to steel. Time seemed to slow. I nodded to the wedding coordinator, who signaled the DJ. The music faded mid-note. I walked to the center of the floor, took the microphone, and felt a strange calm settle over me. Before we continue celebrating, I said, my voice carrying across the suddenly silent room, there's a wedding surprise James and Eleanor have been planning without me that I think everyone should see. The projection screen lowered behind the head table. James froze, his mother still clinging to his arm. What are you doing? He hissed, starting toward me. Showing everyone the truth, I replied as the first document appeared, the email to the lawyer. I narrated calmly as each piece of evidence appeared. The text messages about Eleanor moving in, the property records with her name instead of mine, the honeymoon changes, the financial arrangements giving her control of our wedding gifts. James lunged toward the stage, but Ryan blocked his path. Eleanor's face transformed from confusion to rage as she realized what was happening. She's lying, she shrieked. James, tell them she's lying. The guests' reactions ranged from shocked gasps to knowing nods. James' cousin Melissa covered her mouth. His college roommate winced and looked away. And in the back, James' father stood up slowly, his face ashen. It's all true, isn't it, Robert? I said, addressing my new father-in-law directly. This isn't the first time. James scrambled onto the small stage, grabbing for the microphone. She's just emotional, he said with a nervous laugh. Women, right? Cold feet after the fact. I didn't flinch. 3 years of manipulation isn't cold feet, James. It's a pattern I should have recognized sooner. Eleanor pushed through the crowd, her carefully coiffed hair coming loose. You ungrateful little nobody. After everything we've done to welcome you into this family, this is about tradition, about respecting your elders. This is about control, I corrected her. About making sure James never forms attachments you can't monitor and manage. You don't understand sacrifice, Eleanor spat. You don't understand family. I understand more than you think, came a voice from the crowd. James's sister Catherine, who I'd only met twice because she traveled too much, according to Eleanor, stood up. Just like you did with my husband, Mom. Just like you drove away James' college girlfriend when she got that job offer in Chicago. Katie, sit down, James hissed, but she continued. Remember how Mom convinced you Rebecca was cheating? She wasn't. Mom intercepted her calls when she tried to explain the hospital had extended her residency. James' father finally spoke, his voice tired. 35 years, Eleanor. 35 years of you controlling our children's lives, our finances, our relationships. I watched you drive away everyone who threatened your control. I was too weak to stop it then. I won't be silent now. The dam broke. Family secrets spilled out across the reception hall. Eleanor's manipulations of family trusts, her health emergencies that mysteriously coincided with James's college girlfriend's visits. The way family members who challenged her found themselves excluded from gatherings, written out of wills. Eleanor's carefully constructed mask crumbled completely. Ungrateful children, she shrieked. After everything I've sacrificed, you'd all be nothing without me. Nothing. James stood frozen between his mother and the evidence of their deception, his face contorting as he tried to salvage both his reputation and his primary relationship. She means well, he said weakly. She's always taken care of me. No, James, I said quietly. She's always controlled you. There's a difference. With deliberate movements, I removed the wedding ring from my finger. The platinum band caught the light as I placed it on the table beside a copy of the prenuptial agreement. The one document that had protected me. The one paper Eleanor hadn't managed to alter. I'm not joining this family, I said, my voice steady despite the chaos erupting around us. I'm not becoming another puppet in Eleanor's collection. I walked toward the exit, head high, ignoring the whispers and stares. James grabbed my arm as I passed. You can't do this, he hissed. You're my wife now. For the first time that day, perhaps for the first time in our relationship, I looked directly into his eyes without the filter of love or hope. What I saw was a little boy terrified of disappointing his mother. I felt nothing but pity. She can have you, James, I said quietly. I choose freedom. I pulled my arm from his grasp. Tasha, Ryan, and my other friends formed a protective circle around me as we walked out of the reception hall. No one tried to stop us. 3 months later, the annulment was finalized. The grounds were fraud and misrepresentation, easy to prove with the evidence I'd gathered. To my surprise, James' sister Catherine and his father both testified on my behalf, confirming the pattern of manipulation that had defined the Harrington family for decades. Eleanor had a heart episode the day the papers were filed. Whether real or manufactured, it accomplished its purpose. James moved back into his childhood home to care for her, abandoning the house we'd purchased together. I found a small apartment across town and started therapy. The healing process was slow but steady. Some days I questioned my decision to expose them so publicly. Most days I knew it was the only way to break free completely. A letter arrived from James 6 weeks after the annulment. His handwriting on the envelope brought back a wave of memories. Not all bad, which made it harder. I returned it unopened. Some doors need to stay closed. Tonight, I'm having dinner with friends at a new restaurant downtown. For the first time in months, my laughter is genuine. My phone buzzes with a notification. The wedding venue has finally processed the refund for our reception. I show the notification to Tasha. Bali fund, I say, and she grins. To new beginnings. She toasts, raising her glass. Some say I humiliated myself at my own wedding. I say I saved myself from a lifetime of slow disappearance. The difference matters. If you've ever had to choose between keeping the peace and saving yourself, you know sometimes the most difficult moment of your life becomes the most liberating. Subscribe to Reddit Family Sagas for more stories of people finding their voice when it matters most. Have you ever had to make a dramatic exit to protect your future? Your story might be the courage someone else needs right now.